There is a correspondence of everything in heaven with everything in the human being. People today do not know what correspondence is. There are many reasons for this ignorance, the primary one being that we have moved away from heaven because of our love for ourselves and for the world. You see, people who love themselves and the world above all focus on nothing but earthly matters, because these provide gratification to their more outward senses and pleasure to their moods. They do not attend to spiritual matters because these offer gratification to their deeper senses and pleasure to their minds. So, they set such matters aside, saying that they are too lofty to think about. The early people behaved differently. For them, knowledge about correspondence was the pearl of all knowledge. By means of it, they gained intelligence and wisdom, and by means of it, those who were of the church had a communication with heaven. Knowledge about correspondences is, in fact, angelic knowledge. The earliest ones, who were heavenly people, did their thinking from correspondence like angels, so they could even talk with angels. Further, the Lord was quite often visible to them and taught them. Nowadays, though, this knowledge has been so completely lost that people do not know what correspondence is. First, I need to state what correspondence is. The whole natural world is responsive to the spiritual world, the natural world not just in general, but in detail. So whatever arises in the natural world out of the spiritual one is called something that corresponds. It needs to be realized that the natural world arises from and is sustained in being by the spiritual world, exactly the way an effect relates to its efficient cause. By the natural world, I mean all that extended reality that is under our sun and that receives its light and warmth from it. All the things that are sustained in being from that source belong to that world. The spiritual world, in contrast, is heaven, and to that world belong all the things that are in the heavens. Since a human being is a heaven and a world in least form in the image of the greatest, there is a spiritual world and a natural world within each of us. The deeper elements, which belong to our minds and relate to our intelligence and volition, constitute our spiritual world, while the outer elements, which belong to our bodies and relate to our senses and actions, constitute our natural world. Anything that occurs in our natural world, that is in our bodies and their senses and actions, because of our spiritual world, that is, because of our minds and their intelligence and volition, is called something that corresponds. We can see in the human face what correspondence is like. In a face that has not been taught to dissimulate, all the affections of the mind manifest themselves visibly in a natural form, as though in their very imprint, which is why we refer to the face as the index of the mind. This is our spiritual world within our natural world. Similarly, elements of our understanding are manifest in our speech, and matters of our volition in our physical behavior. So things that occur in the body, whether in our faces or in our speech or in our behavior, are called correspondences. We can also see from this what the inner person is and what the outer person is, namely, that the inner is the one that is called the spiritual person, and the outer the natural person. We can also see that they are as distinct from each other as heaven and earth, and that everything that happens and comes forth in the outer or natural person does so from the inner or spiritual one. We have been talking about the correspondence of our inner or spiritual person with our outer or natural one. In what follows, though, we need to discuss the correspondence of heaven in its entirety with the individual human being. It has already been explained that heaven in its totality reflects a single person, and that it is a person in image and is therefore called the universal human. It has also been explained that for this reason, the heavenly communities that make up heaven are arranged like the members, organs, and viscera in a human being. So there are communities that are located in the head, in the chest, in the arms, and in the particular parts of these members. The communities that are in a particular member then correspond to the like member in a human being. For example, the ones in the head in heaven correspond to our head. The ones in the chest there correspond to our chest. The ones in the arms correspond to our arms, and so on for the rest. We continue in existence because of this correspondence, for heaven is the only basis of our continued existence. The heavenly kingdom in general corresponds to the heart and to all the extensions of the heart throughout the body. The spiritual kingdom corresponds to the lungs and to all their extension throughout the body. Further, the heart and the lungs form two kingdoms in us, the heart governing through the arteries and veins, and the lungs through the nerve and motor fibers, each involved in every effort and action. Within each one of us, in the spiritual world of ours that is called our spiritual person, there are also two kingdoms. One is volitional and the other is cognitive. The volitional governing through affections for what is good, and the cognitive through affections for what is true. These kingdoms also correspond to the kingdoms of the heart and lungs in the body. The same holds true in the heavens. The heavenly kingdom is heaven's volitional side, where the good that flows from love rules. The spiritual kingdom is heaven's cognitive side, where truth rules. These are what correspond to the functions of the heart and the lungs in us. It is because of this correspondence that the heart in the word means volition and the good of love, while the breath of the Spirit means understanding and the truth of faith. This is also why we ascribe feelings to the heart, even though they do not reside or originate there. The correspondence of heaven's two kingdoms with the heart and lungs is the general correspondence of heaven with the human being. The less general correspondence, though, is with the specific members, organs, and viscera, and we need to note what this is like as well. People who are in the head in the universal human that is heaven are supremely involved in everything good. In fact, they are in love, peace, innocence, wisdom, intelligence, and therefore in delight and happiness. These flow into the head and into the components of the head in us and correspond to them. People who are in the chest of the universal human that is heaven are involved in the qualities of thoughtfulness and faith, and also flow into our chests and correspond to them. However, people who are in the groin of the universal human, or heaven, and in the organs dedicated to reproduction, are in marriage love. People who are on their feet are in the outmost heaven, which is called natural spiritual good. People who are in the arms and hands are in the power of what is true because of what is good. People who are in the eyes are in understanding. People who are in the ears are in attentiveness and obedience. People who are in the nostrils are in perception. People in the mouth and tongue in conversing from discernment and perception. People who are in the kidneys are in truth that probes and discriminates and purifies. People in the liver, pancreas, and spleen are in various aspects of purification of what is good and true, and so on. They flow into the like parts of the human being and correspond to them. The inflow of heaven is into the functions and uses of these members, and since the uses originate in the spiritual world, they take form by means of elements characteristic of the natural world, and thus make themselves known in their effects. This is the origin of correspondence. This is why these same members, organs, and viscera in the word mean similar things. Everything there actually has meaning according to its correspondence. The head there means intelligence and wisdom, the chest thoughtfulness, the groin, marriage love, the arms and hands, the power of truth, the feet, what is natural, the eyes discernment, the nostrils perception, the ears obedience, the kidneys the probing of truth, and so on. This is also why people commonly say that someone has a good head when they are talking about someone intelligent and wise. Why they talk about a truly thoughtful person as a bosom friend, a particularly perceptive individual as having a keen nose, a discriminating one as sharp-sighted, someone in power as having a long arm, someone who acts intentionally from love as acting from the heart. These and many other expressions in human language come from correspondence. The expressions actually originate in the spiritual world, though people are unaware of it. The reality of this kind of correspondence of everything in heaven with everything in us has been shown to me by a great deal of experience, by so much in fact that I am as convinced of this as I am of anything that is so obvious as to be beyond doubt. There is no need to append all the evidence here though, and there is too much to include. The reader may see some included in Secrets of Heaven, where correspondences, representations, the inflow of the spiritual world into the natural, and the interaction of soul and body are dealt with. Even though we completely correspond physically to all of heaven, we are still not images of heaven in outward form, but only in inward form. Our deeper reaches are receptive of heaven, while our more outward ones are receptive of this world. To the extent then that those deeper reaches do accept heaven, we are heavens in least form, in the image of the greatest. But to the extent that our deeper reaches are not receptive, we are not heavens or images of the greatest. Nevertheless, our more outward aspects, which are receptive of the world, may be in some form that is determined by the world, and therefore in more or less beauty. Outward, physical beauty has its origins in our parents and from our formation in the womb, and thereafter is maintained by a general inflow from the world. This is why our natural form differs markedly from our spiritual form. I have been shown at times what a spiritual person is like in form, and I have seen that in some people who were lovely and attractive in physical appearance, that inner form was misshapen, black and grotesque, what you would call an image of hell rather than of heaven. While in some who were not beautiful, the inner form was graceful, radiant, and angelic. After death, our spirit looks the way it actually did within the body while we were living in it in this world. Correspondence, though, extends to much more than human beings. There is a correspondence of the heavens with each other. The second or intermediate heaven is responsive to the third or central one. The first or outmost heaven is responsive to the second or intermediate one. And this is responsive to the physical forms in us, the forms that are referred to as our members, organs, and viscera. So it is our bodily nature in which heaven finally comes to rest, on which it stands like a foundation. But this mystery will be explored further elsewhere. It is absolutely necessary to realize, though, that all correspondence with heaven is correspondence with the Lord's divine human, because heaven is from him and because he is heaven. For unless the divine human flowed into every bit of heaven, and, in accord with correspondences, into every bit of our world, there would be no angels and none of us. Again then, we can see from this why the Lord became an individual on earth and clothed his divine nature with a human nature from first to last. This happened because the divine human on which heaven depended before the coming of the Lord was no longer adequate to sustain everything, since we, the foundation of heaven, had undermined and destroyed the design. In the passages referred earlier, you may see what the divine human before the coming of the Lord was, and what its nature was, as well as the quality of the state of heaven then. Angels are stunned when they hear that there are people who credit everything to nature and nothing to the divine, as well as people who believe that their bodies, in which so many wonders of heaven are gathered, are fashioned out of nature, and even that this is the source of our rational capacity. On the contrary, if people would just raise their minds a little, they could see that things like this come from the divine and not from nature, and that nature was created simply to clothe the spiritual and responsively represent it on the lowest level of the design. They compare such people to owls, which see in darkness, but see nothing in the light.